Welcome to episode 3 of the Sports Enthusiast podcast. I am your host, Aaron Randak, joined by
Ash McConnell
and Lucas McGee.
There's a little delay here you may see because Lucas is in Iowa City actually, and we're doing this over Discord. It's gonna probably be how it's gonna start being like this because Lucas is obviously in college, and me and Ashton are just lonely here, seniors in high school. So it's been, 2 weeks since we had a little over 2 weeks since our last recording. So a lot has changed, obviously, in the world of the coronavirus, and obviously sports are in a direct impact of that. Let's just get right on the MLB. We can talk about some of our award winners, just general conversation about, where these guys stand and stuff. Ashton, you want to start off about that?
So going back to my award winners, as far as the MVPs, it's looking. I mean, my pick Cody Bellinger isn't looking good at all. He's hitting under 200. I know Lucas's pick isn't doing well. Yelich is also hitting under 200. But
my pick was Ketel Marte, and he's not doing much better. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
But I did have Juan Soto on the list, who's been an absolute beast since coming back from COVID, and then Acuna, he's been on and off. And as far as AL, my top 2 have been good. Mike Trout, Aaron Judge have been absolute studs. Lindor, he was starting off hot, then he slowed down.
Yeah, to expand on that MVP, Ashton kind of already threw me in here and said that my top 2 are sucking, but whatever, Ashton. In the AL, I had Trout and Lindor, and then Stanton was playing really well, and then the Yankees decided that they didn't want to play any more baseball, so they took a break, and it definitely messed me up a little bit. But Stanton was looking really good when he came out of the league or the beginning. So, Aaron, I wasn't that stupid for saying that.
Yeah, I suppose. But when you look at my MVPs, Fernando Tatis in the NL is doing quite well. Mookie Betts, number 2 in the NL, doing quite well. Obviously, Yelich sucks, but that's neither here nor there. Trout was my number 1 in the AL, doing fantastic. Bregman is actually turning it on lately. He sucked to start the year, though. And then my number 3 is Xander Bogaerts, he's the best hitter in the Red Sox this year, but nothing more to be said there. As for my Cy Youngs, Walker Buehler, not the best start ever. Been pretty inconsistent. Max Scherzer, he's being himself, and Jack Flaherty's barely played any baseball for the NL. For the AL, I have Gerrit Cole, who we will touch on later about a potential scandal. Verlander hasn't been pitching, and Shohei Ohtani, we all know who that's. So, not going very well for the Cy Youngs in my department.
Yeah, for my Cy Youngs, it's completely different. My NL is doing good, my AL is doing bad. So the NL, I got DeGrom, been a stud. Max Scherzer has been a beast, and Flaherty has been amazing for the Cardinals. And then AL, Justin Verlander got hurt. Ohtani, like Aaron said, yeah, he sucks. And Jose Barria is supposed to be the Twins' ace. Not looking like it, and yeah.
Yeah, out of my NL, I obviously had Flaherty at 1, and the Cardinals decided they didn't want to play any baseball, so they've been out for a while. I had DeGrom and then Buehler, which they've been doing pretty good. AL Cy Young, I had Matthew Boyd, who sucked first couple starts. Ohtani, who sucked. And Barrios, who's not been good. I won't say suck. Our reliever of the year, I got Gallegos, who hasn't played, Hader, who's been playing good, and then Yates for the NL. So I guess my NL reliever of the year isn't bad. My AL reliever of the year is 3 guys that I don't even need to bring up because they haven't had that good of a year. So my award predictions are obviously not going well, but I gave it a try this year. I'm doing better than last year. # Paul Goldschmidt for Platinum Glove.
Platinum Glove. Ashton?
I haven't really focused much on my relievers, but NL, Josh Hader, he's been doing pretty good. Kirby Yates he's been on and off, and I just looked at Hector Neris. He's been terrible for the Phillies. And then AL, Chapman's just going to be coming back here shortly. Hendricks, I think he's been doing okay for the A's, not sure. And then Taylor Rogers, he's kind of struggled for the Twins so far this year.
He's only blown 1 save, though.
But his ERA is kind of up there.
Yeah. For me in the NL, I had Will Smith at 3, who's only pitched in 3 games. At 2, I had Yates, and that 1, I had Hader, and those 2 are both doing pretty okay. As for the American League, I had for the third, I had Ken Giles. Can't complain. Aroldis Chapman, who he's obviously started on the Cy Young, or not the Cy Young, the COVID list. Excuse me. And then at number 1, I had Taylor Rogers, who he's been inconsistent this year. He still has 5 saves out of 6 tries, so which isn't too bad. As for Rookie of the Year, I'm just going to go through these real quick. I had Kieboom, Lux, and Dustin May. The only one that's really looking promising out of that is Dustin May for this year. And in the AL, I had Luis Robert McKay and Nate Pearson, who have all looked pretty well this year.
Like I mentioned with my Rookie of the Years, I didn't know much, so I only did one for each league. So for the NL, I did Dylan Carlson, and he's been doing okay for the Cards. And then Joe Adele, he's been doing all right for the Angels.
Yeah, my AL Rookie of the Year. Robert started pretty strong. Luzardo, I don't think came up, but I'm not for sure.
No, he
And then
pitched.
Wander Franco.
He wasn't doing too bad.
Did he? I haven't seen him. I could probably miss those. And Wander Franco, I'm not sure how he's doing either. NL Rookie of the Year, I have Kieboom, Gore, and Carlson's playing a lot better than I thought he was going to be. So that's my positive of the day. Because, yeah, Cardinals baseball wasn't looking too good coming into this year.
So now we're going to move on to kind of a new segment that we've come up with here. It's kind of random, but it's basically like an overrated, underrated. We're going to think about how the general public perceives this player, and we're going to say if that is the right perception, if they're, well, really underrated or overrated. So, Lucas, you want to throw out a couple of players' names or to start out with? We're each going to do 2 players.
My first one's going to be sorry. Try to find where I am on my list. There. I want to talk about Manny Machado. Coming into this year, he was at I think they were talking like a top 3rd baseman, but the hype on him died down a lot, in my opinion. So I guess the media, to me, is underrating him now. They overrated him coming in. I think they're underrating him now. Aaron?
I think he's extremely underrated because all the attention on that team goes to the young guys, Tatis and Paddock and those guys, as well as Kirby Yates. Nobody's really talking about
Lamet.
Yep, that's true. And nobody's really talking about Manny Machado, and I think that he is quietly one of the top 5 or so third basemen in baseball.
Yeah, I agree with Aaron here. Even though Machado hasn't had the best average, that's not really his style. He's not expected to be a 300-plus average hitter. He's supposed to be maybe 270, 280, but he can hit bombs, and he's an excellent fielder. Absolutely. And another member that kind of takes away from that team is Eric Hosmer. You know, he was a beast with the Royals, came into the Padres, kind of fell off, but now he's starting to bump his resume back up as to how good he really was.
And one thing that people don't necessarily realize about Manny Machado is he's batting 3rd in that lineup. And really after him, he has no lineup protection because you're going to have Tatis batting 1st or 2nd. So he's going to see really nothing to hit because they're going to go after those 4 and 5 guys in that lineup who really aren't that stellar. Lucas, any input?
I already gave mine.
Okay, I was just
Yep.
All right, Ashton, your player to watch, or not player to watch, but player to throw out.
My player to throw out is Trevor Story. I feel like whenever the Rockies are showing up, it's always about Arenado or Blackman or a great pitcher. But yeah, Trevor Story is probably, obviously he's 2nd in batting average, but he's probably the best or 2nd best hitter on the team, depending on.
You're putting it first.
Well, as far as this year's going, Blackman's been better, but Trevor Story has been lights out at the plate, and plus he can be a great fielder at times. But I feel like whenever the Rockies are talked about, it's either Arenado or Charlie Blackman or some pitcher. It's never Trevor Story.
Yeah.
Story's there you go. You can go.
Okay. I'm not going to go and say that Story's better than Arenado, but you're right. He gets absolutely no attention on the left side of that infield because, to be fair, I do think Arenado's a better player. He deserves the attention he's getting, but that really does shade over Trevor Story, and he is an elite hitter. I'm not going to say he's an elite defender. He's average at best, but he's got a good arm and he's got good foot speed. His sprint speed is in like the top 90th percentile, which is elite. So yeah, and he hits absolute tanks in course field.
Yeah, he's one of the more consistent players on that Rockies team right now, other than Chuck or Charlie Blackmon. I think Story is often overlooked pretty hard because the star talent of Arenado is really taking away from him. So it's a good guy to bring up because, I mean, when you're thinking Rockies, you almost always overthink over Trevor Story. So I agree, underrated.
Yeah. So my player is going to be Trevor Bauer, who he had an amazing 2018. I believe he finished third in Cy Young voting, and then in 2019 he kind of fell off the face of the earth. He wasn't horrible, but he was not his 2018 self. And now this year he's coming back, and he's had 3 starts, I believe, like 32 strikeouts, and he's on his way to breaking the Reds record for most strikeouts in his first 5 starts, which Sonny Gray already broke. So yeah, what are you guys' thoughts on Bauer?
Believe it or not, I'm going to say he's a little overrated. I've seen a lot of stuff on him on mainstream media lately, and I feel like, I mean, obviously he's stepping up to the play style that they're saying, but I feel like they're starting to get a little overhyping on him. And I think that if not already, they're going to get to the point where they are overhyping. Ashley?
For me, I mean, maybe it's because I don't see as many posts on him, but I feel like he's underrated just for the fact that I never see any posts on him as far as a great pitcher performance. But then again, that's probably because the Reds haven't been doing that well this year. But other than that, he's been an absolute beast, and the Reds don't get talked about that much, but probably because the record and Trevor Bauer has been amazing for them. So I would say he's a little underrated.
Yeah, I completely agree with Ashton here. And the thing with the Reds is they're a small market team. They're usually thought of as the second team in
Ohio there behind Cleveland, who obviously Trevor was at the last 2 years. And I just think when you look at his performance, I saw a crazy stat. His 4-seamer, 2-seamer, slider, and cutter were all first in spin rate in the entire league. I don't know if there's anything to do that with doctoring baseballs, but who knows? All I can say is that he spins the ball amazing. He topped at 98 in his second start, I believe. In his last start against the Brewers, he really wasn't doing too hot in the velocity sector. He was like, I believe, low 90s, but he was still getting the job done. He punched 12 in his last start, and I believe he's starting soon, maybe tomorrow. So yeah, he's up there for me. Lucas, who's your next guy?
My second guy is going to be someone that we both, I think all 3 of us had for Rookie of the Year, Mr. Luis Robert. You guys can go first. I'll go last.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely been amazing for the White Sox. His bat's been electric for them. Had some amazing field plays. He's done it all. And obviously the White Sox, they've not been bad this year. He doesn't really get talked about a lot as what I see. It's usually, I don't even know. The White Sox in general don't even get talked about that much, and they're up there competing with the Indians. But not with the Twins. But he has been a big part. I don't think he gets talked about enough.
Yeah, I think when you look at Luis Robert, he started on fire, but he's really slowed down recently. And he's still kind of the main guy on that White Sox team when it comes to media attention because he is a young stud. So I'm going to go with he's just a hair overrated. And yeah, that's about it.
I'm actually with you, Aaron. I think he is becoming a little overrated. He started out very well. Don't get me wrong. It was an amazing start for rookie season, but he has died off a lot, and I feel that now they're starting to give him too much hype, and he's not going to live up to it, and it's going to end up hurting his career.
Harsh. Ashton, your next guy?
I think it's pretty obvious. I can't really think of anybody else, but it's the guy we've said has been doing well, Christian Yelich. For some ever reason, even though he's having a terrible year, whenever he gets one big hit, it's always posted over social media, which I don't know how bad of a year he's having. He's still getting a bunch of social media posts, and I mean, usually besides his bat, he's not that great of a fielder, so the bat's what's usually electrifies him as a great player, and this year has not been that at all.
Lucas?
Yeah, so on Mr. Yelich, I remember at one point this year he was heading below 100, and it was pretty late into the year, pretty far into the year already. And I was still reading stuff about how Yelich could be an MVP and stuff. And it was like, that's mathematically impossible, in my opinion, when you start as bad as he did. So he is severely overhyped, in my opinion. This may just be a rut year, and he comes back next year and he goes for another MVP run. Don't get me wrong. But this year, he is overhyped miserably. Aaron?
I'm going to disagree with both you guys here. I just think he had that huge slump to start the year, but he hasn't been fantastic as of recently. He hasn't been his MVP self. But when you look at his slash line, 241, 359, and 556, and that's a pretty good last 15 games right there. Overall this season, he's hitting 194 with 5 homers and a 773 OPS. When you look at the batting average, you're like, man, that's so low for him. But a 773 OPS is still an above-average hitter. And for the slump he had, I think that he's actually going to be underrated because so many people looked at that slump and were like, Christian Yelich, he's off. He hit his prime. He's on the downturn. And I think that he can turn it around really quickly. Lucas?
Aaron, your last guy.
I don't know if you had any rebuttal to that. My last guy is going to be Freddie Freeman of the Atlanta Braves. Whoever wants to take
Ashton, you can take the lead.
Oh, okay. For me, he's hitting 276, but I don't feel like he's gotten that much hype this year, so I feel like he's a little underrated. But I feel like it's kind of right, though. Usually he hits over 300. He hits a good amount of homers. He does it all. But this year, he just hasn't been up to the expectations as what I've been seeing kind of looking at his stats. Aaron probably could say different because he probably knows more advanced stats about him. But from what I see about the batting average and all the RBIs, homers, that stuff, he hasn't been as good as he could be. But it's not like a Yelich or a Bellinger. So I would say he's perfectly fine.
Quick stat correction: 266, not 276.
Okay, I'm sorry. But
you
know what?
Go ahead, finish.
You got it.
So, what I'm going to say about Freddie Freeman is usually we see him hitting a lot more home runs than he's hit so far. I know that's a weird stat to go off of. It's actually a horrible stat to go off of.
Well, it's a good stat, in my opinion.
To me, that's showing that he's playing under what he normally does. He's underrated reasonably. I got him listed perfectly. I think the media is giving him the correct amount of hype for the way he is playing. Aaron?
This is a guy that's severely underrated when it comes to the media. He's, in my opinion, the best first baseman in baseball. And I think it's kind of the same with that Christian Yelich situation. He started really slow, but when you look at his last 7 games, his slash line is 320, 414, and 600, and that equates to a 10-14 OPS, which would be top 10 in the league right now. So I think when you look at those stats, and that's a 25 at-bats, I obviously know it's a small sample size, but when you look at those stats, I think he's on the upswing as well. So after that, we're going to talk about just a couple young studs that have come into the league here, and just a quick word on each of them for all of us. So we're going to start out with Carter Kieboom of the Washington Nationals, kind of taking over for Anthony Rendon. Hasn't had the most at-bats this year, but yeah, Lucas, you want to take the reins?
He's playing below where I expected him to go, if I'm going to start off blunt. He's not where I thought he was going to be coming into this year. He's letting me down, but I'm not saying he's playing bad. It's just I had higher expectations than I should have. Action?
This is where you guys are going to shine more, but from what I'm seeing for his stats, he's definitely not filling Rendon's shoes so far. He's batting 235, but for being young, you'll expect it. You can't expect to fill the shoes right away. It's very rare to see a superstar player like that, but I think over time he might have a chance to be something.
I think the thing that's been holding him back is he hasn't necessarily had as many at-bats as he could have this year. He's played in 10 games so far and hitting 243 with no homers, which is kind of concerning, 37 at-bats, 4 RBIs, 599 OPS, which was way below league average.
So he's definitely been disappointing to start off with, but I do think eventually he will come into that role and replace Rendon at third baseman.
The next guy we're going to talk about is Alec Boehm of the Phillies, who recently got called up. Don't think he's had the most at-bats, but Lucas, you want to start us off with that?
He's at about 14 at bats, I think we were saying when we were talking about it earlier. I think that he's showing a lot of good flashes to begin with, and I think he can step into this Phillies team and make a difference. And the fact that they needed that corner infielder to improve, and I feel like he's picking up that slack. Gives them a pretty solid infield, mainly looking at the third baseman and shortstop. If Boehm continues where I think he's going to be, him and Gregorius can be really good together as your middle tier guys to go with Harper and Realmuto, and I feel like this can push the Phillies to another level.
Just
I
on a
think
little
he's
tangent here.
playing.
Speaking of those last two guys, sorry to cut you off, but those two have been absolutely mashing the ball. Harper and Realmuto. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, it was a dick move. Anyway, Ashton, let's hear what you got for Boehm.
I mean, you pretty much said everything. I mean, they didn't really have another middle infielder to go with Didi, so he could possibly be something special and help out, boost the middle of the infield.
I mean, he doesn't play the middle of the infield. He plays third. But you get the picture. Close enough. So he's had 14 at-bats, batting .286 this year, no homers, so the power production really hasn't been there. Small sample size, so I don't really have much to say on him at all. Next guy is going to be Joe Adell of the Angels, who recently got called up. Lucas, you want to talk about him?
This man has 4 hits and 24 at-bats. I'm not saying that we need to be concerned, but I'm saying that I think he's a little overhyped coming in. He's got a lot of learning to do. He's not nearly what the Angels needed with everything that happened with Ohtani. They needed someone to step up. It's not Joe Adell. Go ahead.
I mean, you never know. He could have a chance. Right now, he hasn't been stepping up, especially it didn't help early on in his first few games. He had that ball that hit off his glove and went over the fence. That's not a good moment to have as a rookie. But, I mean, he's picked it up a little bit. It says out of 28 at-bats.
Yeah, he got 4 at-bats today, Lucas.
He's got 6 hits. And so, I mean,
he went 2 for 4 today.
He's hitting okay. He hasn't hit an extra base hit yet, which can be a little frightening, but I think he can turn it around.
Yeah, I'm not going to put too much stock into what he's done so far because has obviously been struggling, struck out 13 times this year. But I think when you look at the future of this Angels team, I think he is the future center fielder here. As Mike Trout gets older, he's going to move to the corner outfield, one of the corner outfield positions. When you look at that lineup, with everybody healthy, you have Mike Trout, Joe Adell, Shohei Ohtani, Anthony Rendon, and then you just kind of have to fill in the spots. You obviously have David Fletcher, who's having an amazing year this year, who can play second and short. Andrelton Simmons, another guy. Who knows if he'll stay? I'm not sure on the contract there. But, when you look at that lineup, it's honestly scary 1 through 6 or 7. That's a pretty good lineup right there. Next guy is going to be a big contact guy from the White Sox, another rookie, Nick Madrigal.
I love what Madrigal's been doing so far. I think that he's stepping into a young White Sox team and he's helping. And this White Sox team's going to be one of the better teams in the future. I think everyone kind of knows that now with Vaughn at first, coming up, Moncada, Madrigal, Robert, Eloy Jimenez. I mean, they got so many different pieces. Kopech's a pitcher out there. I think that he's showing that he can be a solid contact hitter, solid one hitter for this White Sox team. And like I said, I love what I'm seeing. He's probably my favorite, third favorite out of the new faces group we're talking about today.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lucas. Looking at his stats, he's hitting near 300, which is really good. He's one of the nice young studs that the White Sox have, and they're looking like they could have a bright future and contending for the top of the AL Central.
Yeah, I'm completely against you guys on Nick Madrigal. I just don't see it. I mean, he does have defensive potential there at second base, but it's not necessarily a premium position. And I just don't necessarily see anything coming out of him. He might be a high average guy, but I just don't see any power production there for him. And I think this White Sox team, you kind of need that. especially.
I don't think they do. I completely disagree, actually. I
I
think that they'd be fine with Vaughn, Eloy Jimenez, and Juan Moncada. I feel like those three will have enough power that they can afford to have Madrigal and Robert hitting for contact. I think they can find a couple power hitters to fill in the other spots. I feel like this White Sox team
Jose Abreu
will have
died.
Madrigal fit perfectly.
When did Jose Abreu die?
That- I mean,
Andrew
I'm
Vaughn.
obviously talking in the future. I'm talking in the future.
Jose Abreu is not a part of the White Sox future. Breaking news. He is 33.
I mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but you also understand what I'm saying. Like, you're talking youth on that team. That's the people you're looking at. And I've been talking youth.
I just don't see. I mean, I think you can't lead him off because I think that's going to be Robert's spot in the future because I see him always more of a leadoff guy than a 2 or 3 hitter, kind of a Ronald Acuna type build. And I don't know if you could hit him down in the lineup, but that's really the only spot you could put him is down there. I don't see. I mean, maybe in the 2 spot. So next guy we're going to talk
Next up,
is Dustin May of the Dodgers, who has been electric this year. Lucas.
yeah, I mean, you said it pretty bluntly. He is pitching very well this year. He's looking great, and I feel like he's going to be one of the better pitchers of the future if he can continue what he's doing now. Ashton?
Yeah, I saw him in his first start. I think the first series against the Giants, he had kind of got banged up, but ever since then, he's kind of been really good. He's been really accurate. He's even got a really nasty like 2-seamer sinker pitch. I've seen a couple of those, and it's just if he can just keep continuing being accurate and even getting stronger, get that velocity up, he could be something special for the Dodgers.
Get that velocity up. He's throwing 99. What else do you want from the guy? He's
Okay.
been electric this year. When you look at his stats, just the basic counting stats, you have a 3 ERA on the dot, 24 innings, 19 Ks, and 1.25 WHIP. WHIP's a little high for what you like to see. Strikeouts are a little low for what you like to see. But overall, when you look at this guy's stuff, you could definitely see it translating. 5 walks on the year, which isn't horrible. Also isn't fantastic. But when you look at how this could translate to the future, he has elite potential. Next guy we're going to talk about is Dinelson Lamet from the San Diego Padres. Lucas?
Lamet came into this year as a fringe pitcher, I'll call him. I don't know if anyone was really expecting much from him. He is absolutely amazing this year. And it's another guy that I'm fully for. I feel like he's going to be a future good pitcher. And that's an opposite of what I got. Action?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. He's been fantastic this year. He's got a 1.59 ERA. He's 2-1 in the year, and he's been an absolute stud for the Padres.
A lot of you guys may be thinking, well, why would you talk about this guy in this young studs group? Because he pitched in 2017, he pitched in 2019. But I just think it's because nobody really expected anything out of him in those last 2 years. And when he coming into this year, no expectation whatsoever. And he really is a new face that's coming up. Nobody really talks about this guy in the mainstream media. He's another one of those guys that if we talked about in that last segment, he's definitely an underrated player.
For sure.
Next thing we're going to talk about
Alrighty.
Charlie Blackmon. Not to cut you off there, Lucas, but I'm cutting you off. Could he hit 400? And do you think he will, Lucas?
You're talking a shorter season. I mean, obviously, we talked about this in our preseason talk. With him, with the whole shorter season, you're going to see better stats. You're going to see this. You're going to see that. I think that he will be able to hit 400 this season, especially if that team ends up having a coronavirus outbreak similar to the Cardinals and they miss a large period of time. I know that would kind of make his stat probably voided. I'm not sure how the at-bats would work out if he'd still be qualifying.
In-game play to make you qualified for a batting average later.
Okay, so I guess he probably still would technically qualify. He is, I mean, obviously he's hitting amazing. He's one of the better hitters in baseball right now in terms of contact, and I feel that anyone was to get 400 in any season, he's got the best chance. Ashton?
I'm going to have to disagree with you. Yes, he's been amazing, but I do not think he can keep this up for an entire 60-game season. Yes, even though it is shorter, everyone is due to have a slump at some point. So I would disagree with you. I don't think he'll be able to hit 400 for the year.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Ashton on this one. I think the power could stay there. He only has 3 homers this year, but when you look at his slugging percentage in his last 15 games, it's .737, which is obviously elite. So I think he could keep the power numbers up and potentially get an MVP with that. But I think when you're looking at, maybe the top 50% potential on this one, you're going to look at high 300s type of guy this year. The next one we're going to talk about is,
If you guys haven't seen it, there was this video about a week ago that surfaced of Gerrit Cole. He slicked back behind his ear, and then he touched his hat, and with that, his hand stuck to his hat, making everyone believe that there was pine tar obviously behind his ear. And one interesting point that I heard Trevor Bauer make is that there's so many pitchers in the league that are doing this, and it's just the MLB kind of turns a blind eye to it, but it's still not legalized. And I think I'm going to turn that question around here: is should these foreign substances be legalized, and if so, why? Lucas?
Well, I'm going to first talk about how I feel about everything that happened with this video. Watching the video, the hand motion he makes is similar if he was to be moving his thumb across the inside brim of his cap. It just kind of looks like he popped his thumb, like if you were trying to crack your thumb, essentially. That's what it looks like he did. So you could make an argument that it wasn't sticking as much as he was trying to crack his thumb. I know that's not what everyone's making for an argument, but it's something you could have said. Next, I'm going to turn this around to your question, and I'm going to say I don't feel they should be legalized now. I feel if they could have been legalized before, when pitchers were throwing slower and the breaks on their pitches weren't already as elite as they are now, I feel that would have been a time to do it. But I feel now we're too far invested, and you're almost going to have to wait for the pitchers to, in the high school times and in the college times, to be accustomed to using it and make the shift that way. As something that would change now could definitely mess up a league. And it's kind of the whole implications that could happen if you made a change now when the pitchers are throwing the way they are. And yeah, Ashton?
I hadn't seen the video until now. I just watched it. My first thought is this the only time he's done it, or has he done it multiple times?
I think the odds are if he was doing it, he would definitely have done it. Maybe starting last year when you look at his stats jump. I am going to say that it definitely should be legalized because there's so many pitchers that are using it and are doing it. You see these like little clips that surface of people cheating. Obviously, the big one would be Ivan Nova is a big one. Michael Pineda, another one. So when you see these clips of people cheating, there's obviously so many people that don't get caught doing this. And I think the MLB is just turning a blind eye to all these guys. I think if you make it legalized, there's no like implications on it on your body. It's not like steroids where it can harm your future. And I think if you do allow this starting in maybe the next year, hitters will adjust to it. They'll adjust to the higher spin rate. They'll adjust to more break on the pitches. So I don't think it'll have any negative implications to baseball, in my opinion.
I don't think you can say no negative implications because that is a very bold statement to make. Because almost every change you make will have a negative implication. I'm just saying that's a very strict, bold, unlikely comment to make. I'm not saying it's going to have a drastic negative implication by any means. I'm not saying that you're going to have pitchers or hitters like Charlie Blackmon, who's almost hitting 400, down to hitting 180 or something crazy. I'm saying that there could be a negative implication. Excuse the helicopter going to the Iowa City Hospital. Prayers up. Anyway, the negative implications could be something more as like certain pitchers will have to retire earlier because they can't compete with the younger pitchers. They're using the pine tar that they were going to use when they were 26. They're using it when they're 18. It's causing your 30-year-old pitchers to have to quit when they're 36 instead of when they're 40.
Why would pine tar short?
It's just one of those changes. Because you're going to have younger people throwing hard. You're going to have younger people playing better than the older people, thus causing people to retire earlier.
Already throw harder than older people, but that doesn't necessarily.
Well, yes, I'm not arguing that. I'm saying that the change that the pine tar would make, because I'm assuming the pitchers don't come in using pine tar. I assume it happens when you're 23 and you're at like the fourth starter spot in your rotation kind of thing. It's one of those things that you bring on during your career, you don't start with it. And I feel that it stay that way just to keep the natural path of pitchers going. That's about all I got.
But you're not going to be telling 18-year-olds to start using it and then not allowing these 33-year-olds to use it. You're going to let everyone start using it at the same time. It's not going to be like the 18-year-olds.
Yeah, but it's still one of those things that, like, let's do it this way. Dustin May starts using pine tar. He goes from 99, throws a little harder. What's that?
How would you throw harder with pine tar? You'd have a higher spin rate.
Okay, whatever. Higher spin rate, better curveball, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Now you got, who's at the end of their career?
Verlander?
Oh, I'm drawing a blank.
Verlander.
But you got an older pitcher. I didn't want to use Verlander because I feel like he's just different.
Clayton Kershaw.
You got an older pitcher. Kershaw, sure. We can use Kershaw. Kershaw, he's been using it. Suddenly, Dustin May is better than Kershaw because he began using it. And you see Kershaw having to leave the league earlier. I know that to you, that doesn't seem like a negative implication. Yeah, but the negative playing field is going to cause the league to change. And I am just saying that this change could have a negative implication in the future. I'm not saying that this is going to literally change the league groundbreaking. I'm saying that for you to say there is no negative implications to this, that'd be true. There will be one.
Well, then what is it? I mean,
I'm not going to tell you what it is because I'm not a genius, but every change that's been made in sports has had a negative implication.
I mean, you could say that, but there's, like, I don't understand. I mean, what, pine tar company?
We're arguing about something really stupid here. I think we both need to just step away.
But I
think our argument here is just it's based on such a thin line that we should just
let me cut it.
We're arguing two completely different things, and it's not working.
Wait, how are we?
Let me cut.
I don't know what we're arguing differently.
Throughout this pine tar discussion, I think you both make great points. As far as Lucas with the possible batting averages going down, that would be a negative. But Aaron, I agree with Aaron as far as it will not affect pitchers in the future as far as retiring early. I mean, it's an even playing field.
Yeah, isn't that? I mean, that's the goal of like rule-based sport is to make everything as even as possible.
So are you going to legalize all steroids now because you argue, which I know you argue that they should be legalized. I know you argue that they should be legalized. But earlier you did make the comment that steroids do have future negative implications. So, I mean, which way do you want to side on that one?
I still think steroids should be legalized, first of all. But I think pine tar is like the obvious thing that like you're not putting pine tar, you're not injecting it into your butt. You like
a really interesting thing to be injecting.
Well, to be fair, that's where you inject steroids.
Yeah, I'm aware.
So, I mean, there's nothing harmful that comes out of using pine tar.
It's one of those things that it's something that you can argue both ways just because you don't know what's going to happen. It's similar to arguing if a mask works. There's so many different ways you can argue against and for that it's hard to draw one thin line argument. I feel like we're just going to have to call this one a stalemate till next year when they legalize it. And then we can talk about it.
I mean, I'll keep going if you want, but if it's all right.
Move on.
All right. This is another potential topic here. We're going to talk about our thoughts on the MLB suspending teams' play after these coronavirus outbreaks, and did they actually have a plan? Lucas, start with that.
Okay. I'm attending the University of Iowa currently. Let's go this way. They claim they have a plan. I don't know if anyone's been really looking at the news lately. The University of North Carolina claimed they had a plan. 1 weekend, they're talking about having outbreaks of 500 students getting it, coronavirus, in literally a week. If you do that math, by the end of this semester, the entire college population at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, will have coronavirus.
Have had it.
To me, the people who are saying they have a plan are saying, I don't think they actually have a plan. I think they believe they do, and it doesn't work. And instead of making the grown-up decision and saying, we need to step back for a week, we need to try and figure out a new plan, they're saying, put your head down and go. Now, I do argue that the virus is not as horrible for these athletes. Not older. Older people, it's obviously horrible for them. But for these athletes, they have stronger lungs, stronger hearts. I feel that the virus is not as plaguing for them. And I mean, you also have the problem of false positives. I mean, Juan Soto is most likely a false positive just by the way that everything went down. We can't confirm that because the tests are very inconsistent for this virus. That's just one nature of them. Something that would have been interesting is if they would have said their plan, or if they could have got Arizona to allow them to have a bubble. That could have helped too.
Just
but
to
it's
jump in here, Lucas.
it's one of those things that the NFL. It's the same thing as the NFL. Like the NFL right now, they claim they have a plan. They're not going to be bubbling. The NBA does have a bubble. The NBA has not had a case since forever ago. I guess it's been a very long time since they've seen a case, and they're doing it right because if you re-enter the bubble, within those 7 days, you're expected to show at least one symptom of coronavirus if you have received the coronavirus. So I feel that the MLB's plan was very questionable to begin with. I mean, there's people saying that it wasn't going to work from the beginning, and we're seeing flaws in it. But at the same time, I do see where they were trying to go, and I feel like this is probably the best they could do without bubbling.
The issue with the MLB is you can't bubble in the MLB unless it's in the playoffs because the MLB relies so heavily on their independent TV deals in the net and the local.
And I think at a certain point, you need to recognize that you can't. A different time now. We're gonna have to adjust.
But the
It's
issue
sad and it sucks, but they needed. It's not like it's something that they could undo or that they can just redo later. It's one of those things that this is going to be a change for a while. You're going to have to live life weird for a while, and they should have just said, independent TV deals are done. We're going to do all of it right here. We're going to give all these people this money, and they should have just dished those deals. I understand the money behind it would not have worked as well, but it's better than having to cancel as many games as they have. I mean, the Cardinals haven't played contracts.
But then you're voiding your contract.
And you would have to void the contract.
They agreed on
the nature of where you are.
You can't just
the nature of what the world is now.
That's billions of dollars lost for a sport, though, if you void those contracts.
But billions. I mean, they're probably losing. They're losing a lot of money by not having these teams play, and they're putting people at risk.
So much more money. If
the money should not be driving public health.
But
money should never be driving public health. It's going to be the reason that the vaccine is going to be hard to find is because they're going to let the money drive the public health. When the money drives the public health, it causes problems within a country, which is why England is doing a lot better than the United States currently, because they're not letting the money drive their public health, they're letting their public health department drive their public health.
Well, the issue with that is we wouldn't be playing sports right now if we were not letting money drive the public health. Like the NFL is going to happen no matter what people say, and that is because of
the NBA did do something. They understood that they were going to lose a good amount of money. They're not making as much money, but they did something, and you can see that it's working. I mean, all these athletes were safe,
but
you don't have to worry about it.
The NBA was a perfect scenario, though. They were already started with the regular season, and what were they, 3/4 done with the year? They only had to play 8 more games.
So these guys only had to be in there for 35 days, if that, to play their 8 games and get out for the teams that couldn't make it.
And then for these teams that will make it, you're only going to have to be in there for maybe a quarter of the year at max.
When you look at but here's the thing, Aaron, is you're not realizing that they haven't had a case in literally a month.
Yes, but
so it doesn't matter. It's not a time restriction.
But
there's no time limit.
No, because
you are literally stopped the spread
for a year. They don't want to not see their families for an entire year, Lucas.
And that's fine. I understand that. But when you leave, 7 days, you could literally space out the NBA season. You could expand it to a year instead of having a long off season. You could literally be like, okay, this week you get to see your family. You come back. You don't show any symptoms. And through that week off, you're fine. One of those things that, again, you have to change the way that it used to be in order for stuff to readjust. Are you saying that next year the NBA is not going to be able to work the same way?
It's not going to be a bubble.
I mean, argue that. I argue that they're not going to have to. I feel like by the time the NBA season starts next year, we should be able to have a little bit of normality come back.
What are
But I
you
also
arguing?
need you to I'm arguing that a bubble works. I'm arguing that the
But I'm
bubble
saying
should have
these
been
other
at
sports,
least somewhat
you can't bubble.
implicated.
You
Even if they could
cannot.
have divided it AL and NL. And I understand that cross division games are a huge thing, blah, blah, blah. But if you would have cut those out, could have had 16 teams in one state, 16 teams in another. And that's for NFL. You could have had 16 each way. And it could have had two bubbles and you would have been fine. But
Well,
I understand that you can't be in a bubble for a full year.
Okay. Well,
You can't bubble the whole regular season, is my whole argument here.
because one, like I said, these local TV markets, there's so much, like, you can't void those contracts because that's billions of dollars lost. If you want to destroy your business, that's when you void those contracts. And I just think when you look at the MLB, they obviously didn't have a plan. They're just shutting these teams down with outbreaks. I think it's tough for this season to go on in general, but I really do think they're doing the best they can, and there is a chance for a bubble in the playoffs, however, because those games are nationalized, they're national TV, and they won't have to be there for very long because they can make the playoffs go quick. They can potentially shorten the playoff series if they want to. So that is the potential bubble. But the regular season, I don't think there's any chance you could bubble during the regular season. Ashton, any input?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Aaron as far as it's tough to have a bubble throughout the whole year. I mean, I know for the NBA, luckily they only have to be there for like 3-4 months, but these MLB players having to be there for a half a year, it's got to be painful. Unless the only way would be if they do what the NBA is going to do is allowing like one family member. But who knows what Rob Manfred's been doing? I mean, I think it's reason why the MLB's been getting hate is because of him. Is because I think he's got to do a better job of restricting like players on places they can go, because you've been hearing stories like a couple Indians players were caught gambling or whatever, sneaking out, and then when they tried to sneak back in, they had to miss time because they were caught sneaking out. I think Rob Manfred should have done a better job at enforcing rules on where you can and can't go.
I mean, you can argue the NBA had the same problem. Lou Williams went to a strip club and got chicken wings and ate them with whatever that wrapper is. I mean, everyone's going to eventually slip up and do something they shouldn't have. And it's the same argument as pine tar. It's the same argument as steroids. It's breaking the rules, and it's if they want to focus on it or not. And it's going to be impossible to enforce all the way. The entire Marlins team going to a strip club, however, that's sketchy. That one probably shouldn't have happened. If it was 10 players, it's one of those things that the team won, or the 10 players the team won. It shouldn't have happened, but it did. Aaron, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I don't really have anything else to say there. I mean, we've said our piece. So, yeah, that's going to wrap it up for the MLB portion of this Sports Enthusiast Podcast, Episode 3. So, yeah, that's going to wrap it up for
Episode 3 of the Sports Enthusiast Podcast, MLB edition. We'd like to thank you guys for tuning in.
Check us out on Instagram at the Sports Enthusiast. Twitter's at SportsENTPod.
Let us know any suggestions you guys may have, any tweaks, any of all that. Instagram comments are going to be an easy way to do it. Instagram DMs as well. We're checking those daily. Any merch that you'd like to have, just let us know. Hit us up in the DMs.
So, yeah, that's going to do it for us here. And thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank you.